Hello and welcome to another episode of Speed Mentorship. My name is Matt McAleer, your host. Here on Speed Mentorship, our goal is to help you be a leader that others want to follow. We're going to do that by interviewing top-notch leaders who are world-class at what they do. We're going to ask them tough and challenging questions, and we're going to just enjoy the ability to learn from these individuals, see what makes them unique, see what makes them successful. If you guys find value in these episodes, make sure you share that with somebody else so that they can receive the same value. We also know it's best to do a lot of this stuff with teams or with other individuals so that you can share and collaborate on some of the different ideas. Really excited for today's podcast guest, Randy Oostra. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, well, thanks for joining us on today's episode where we are here with Randy Oostra and we get to ask him some fun questions today. Thanks for joining us, Randy.
Hey, great to be here.
Cool. Well, the first question, Randy, is about your background.
Sure. So actually, my wife and I grew up in Northwest Iowa. My mom was a Dutch immigrant, and so my dad actually was first generation, but the Dutch settled in different parts of the United States. They actually started out in New York, New Amsterdam at the time, and then some of the Dutch are in Pennsylvania and Western Michigan. There's a whole group in Western Iowa, and agriculture, farming community. Grew up in a town of about 3,000 people. There's probably 50, 60 kids in my high school class.
Wow.
My wife went to the small school, so they had like 10, and half of them were her relatives. So she went to another school about 10 miles away. Great hardworking parents. They were both the oldest of their families, so in those days they worked. They didn't have the opportunity to go to school. My mom thought she might have went to second grade, but could never remember. Grew up poor, now that I look back on it, didn't know we were poor. Great home, very religious, strong faith. The Dutch many times come from this Reformed faith. So grew up with a very great family and an older brother, older sister, and then actually went to a small college nearby. That's all at that time we were exposed to, could afford, called Northwestern College in Orange City, Iowa. Orange, a Dutch thing. And then from there, did a whole variety of things, went to graduate school, went to medical technology school because my advisor told me to from college. Yeah. And then got into, actually was going to be a teacher. I wanted to teach in college, and I had to earn some money, so I was consulting, met my wife, and did that for 5-6 years, and decided not to do the college teaching thing. Yeah. And then at 30, we quit our jobs, sold our house, sold our cars, and went back to school at the University of Minnesota. Long story there, but had 2 kids and started over. And so lived in an apartment and got into hospital administration, and then worked in Minneapolis, Grand Rapids, Michigan, St. Louis, and then here. That's a quick 40 years of healthcare.
Nice, very cool. And today, how big is ProMedica? How many people, size-wise?
Yeah, we're about, revenue-wise, about $7 billion. 40.
Just $7 billion.
That's kind of crazy. For a kid from Iowa, that sounds kind of crazy. About 40, 5,000 employees, and then today we work in about 28 states.
Wow, incredible. So what does somebody, in your role and your position do on a daily basis? What are some of the things that you specifically do?
Yeah, it's changed over the years. Primarily I go to meetings. When I go home at night, my wife asks me, what'd you do today? I have to pull up my calendar because literally, the way life works these days is, on the half hour, I'm probably sitting in a meeting usually. I used to joke I'm a professional board member, so I go to a lot of board meetings. So a lot of that, but I think my main focus is, culture, strategic planning. It's always been my passion. I spent more time on probably strategic planning and business development than anything. Yeah. And so I do a lot of that. And so we've got great operators, so they're operating the day-to-day business. Occasionally I need to get involved in that, but not too often.
And how many meetings a day would you say on average, or week or day, do you actually do?
Oh boy, could be 8 to 10 a day.
8 to 10 a day, wow.
It depends, a lot of short half hours sort of things, and that. Not every single day, but I spend a lot of times in meetings, and that's even at times to get a little dizzy.
Sure.
Just kind of all blurs together.
Yeah, I could see that. What do you think are some of the things that you are,
your top most successful habits, things that you believe you are really, really good at?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always been this strategy thing. This is a compliment somebody gave me, and it's also probably a weakness. Somebody's telling me you always start with yes. And so anybody's got an idea, you want to talk to this person, sure, we'll talk to them. And always open, always try to grow and really believe in the power of networking. I've got a slide that shows how I've met people who've introduced me to other people, who introduced me to a third person, and that's the person we did a deal with. And so I've always thought this power of networking, and I've always, my passion is strategy. How do you get up every day, position the organization for where it's going to be, 3 or 4 years from now? How do we, and then, okay, what we're doing now is great, but what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And so, and a lot of it's like, okay, we're going to do something, where's the plan? Give me a business plan. So I think those are the sort of things that are probably the things that people would say are things that they would think would be more strengths.
So what would you say are some of your biggest weaknesses, and how do you cope and handle or manage some of the weaknesses on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think it's changed over a career. I think early on, just as a new leader, I probably didn't make decisions crisp enough, and it's kind of like, I think people around me like, come on, just make a decision, you get better at that. And then I think, I think at times just kind of, taking the role that I always say, given the hat you're given, you have to wear. And so, I'm more extroverted today. I'm not normally that way, but it's like you go to work, you tie your top button. If we have an event, I tell my wife, I'll see you afterwards. I'm going to work. And you have to interact with people and all those sort of things. But the other things I think more recently that this idea of saying yes to a lot of things, you can get too many things going on, and I personally like that. But I think I find a lot of people that's hard in that they think there's too many things going on, and we're not focused enough. And so I think that's probably the thing. And then the other thing is the communications. You always communicate too much, not enough, and with boards especially, give too much detail, you're in the weeds, you're not sharing. So, I'd love to say I figured that out, but never really figured that out.
Interesting. Yeah. So, and saying yes to a lot of things. And how do you manage that? Because I think I tend to get in that same spot as well, where it's like, yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do this. Yes, that makes sense as well. How have you found ways to help navigate that so your team doesn't feel too overloaded with stuff? Yeah,
it's division of labor. So, we've got a lot of things going on, and when my board says, well, how can you manage all this? Well, this person has this thing, this person has that thing.
Sure.
And then they're like, well, who's the glue here that holds it all together? And, it's just a couple of us. Yeah. And it's like, well, what if something happens to you? Then what happens? So yeah, I'm a real division of labor person. It's like, hey, we've got people working on it, and people love to run with a project. So so to me that's fine. But even now, healthcare is tough right now.
Yeah.
And I was having a friend of mine tell me, you have to be careful. Some people compartmentalize things. So, okay, we're having some financial problems. Okay, we're going to deal with that. Now let's talk about strategy, or let's talk about growth. And for some people, that just can't. They can't do that. It's like if they have one issue, they kind of throws everything else off. And so to be a little more respectful of that. And so, I've just been thinking a lot more about it. I have a favorite article. It's Harvard Business Review. And it was called The Incomplete Leader. And we're all incomplete. We'll die incomplete leaders. And I think if you get up every day just realizing you're an incomplete leader, you always will be in there. So that's this idea, you got to keep working at it. You got to keep thinking. Things that you forget, you're like, oh yeah, I used to talk more about that. Or things, you just got to keep trying.
That's good. So talk to us about stress. Obviously, none of us experience stress, right? It's really pretty null and void of that. But how do you manage stress on a daily basis as somebody in a leadership position as yourself that I'm sure has a lot of different stuff going on? How do you manage it?
Well, there's watch, actually. It's a stress, this Apollo Neuro thing is actually very, very helpful. And again, I, exercise helps a lot. And, from a faith standpoint, I think one of the, ideas here is, what do you worry about? How do you worry? Then scripture is don't worry about anything, but in everything bring your requests to God, the peace of God, well, guard your heart and mind and all understanding. And that's my motto lately. And it's like, I say this at work, and I don't mean to be disrespectful of work, but I always tell people it's work. It's really important, but it's not what's ultimately important in life. And your family's important. And for many of us, our faith is the most important part of our life. And again, I go back to how I grew up. When we used to take my kids back to Iowa, and as we got older, and they would look at us like, "You grew up here. You're halfway normal people." And I think it's that, I always look at, my father didn't have any education, my mom didn't have education, and they were always in service jobs. So anyone I see in that role, that's my mom and dad. And so I think that always grounds you, know, and I think, I think it, I keep coming back to work as work.
Yeah.
And it's important, but it's not what marks our lives.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit, talking about failure. And I know this is a difficult topic for a lot of people, especially younger leaders when they're trying to make their own way and do something big, is how to overcome failure. Have you found any tips or tricks or other ways of being able to get past failure faster and kind of move on to the next thing?
Yeah, I think, again, given my age, we've had a lot of things that failure, disappointments, things that, I was really disappointed that I thought we were going to get a deal done and we didn't get it done.
Yeah.
Or disappointment in people or decisions and all that. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, you take the view of, things happen for a reason. People believe ultimately they happen for good. That, you try to put them in the context of okay, why did that happen? And, I'm always an optimist, so there's good things ahead.
Yeah.
Maybe now is not the right time. Maybe there's something better out there. So we're going to keep pushing ahead. So, and I think, we're all human. We all take failure hard. But I think over time, and I think I can bounce back better because I think you put it more in perspective. And even, there are times where I think like, man, I thought we were going to be able to do X, and boy, it's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden something pops up and you're like, oh, this is going to be better. Mm-hmm. So I think over a period of time, you just, you learn to kind of put it in the context. And again, it's a job. And again, I hate to say that again, but it's a job, and you got to put it in the perspective of your life.
Would you say that you are more of an introvert or an extrovert? And then depending on your answer, what kind of advice do you have for introverted or extroverted leaders?
Yeah. I would say until...
Or an ambivert.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. I started out very introverted and being an introvert. I think it's just because of how I grew up and, very, to a fault, being very, very respectful, kind of keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, sort of thing. And then as I got into more jobs where I was expected to do more social stuff. And again, you just learn it. And I think it's, I think for a lot of people, it's not natural. There are always people that are the natural, life of the party sort of person.
Totally.
Yeah. And, so I think now I've learned, and I think it's just, I look at people who walk into a room and introduce themselves, they make eye contact, they talk to people, they ask people how their day is going, they engage in hallway conversations. That's a learned skill. And I think a lot of times people, I can't do that. And for some people that's probably true, but I think you can learn it. And I think, I go to a lot of events. I look at names. I study names before I go to the event. When I'm in a room, I'm making sure I'm trying to get to everybody in the room and at least say hi. Yeah. Or, just acknowledge that they're there. So I think those are all the sort of things that you can really work on and start to think about. And again, I think sometimes people hesitate because they don't feel like they're in a place to be an extrovert. So like, well, yeah, I work here, but I probably need to hang back because you're the boss and you should take the lead. Mm-hmm. And I think the encouragement there has to be from a leader to ask the folks to say, hey, get out there. So even for events that we would have, we have a holiday party, some are key leaders, yakking at them and say, don't sit at a table. Don't sit down with your friends. Yeah. Get out there. We're working tonight. And then over a period of time, a couple of them go, yeah, I know we're working. If they sit down, they're like, word, I'm going to yell at them. But it's kind of like, no. And I think those are the sort of things you gotta do. And I think leaders can help encourage folks as well. I think just watch the people who do it well.
And then what kind of advice do you have for the next generation?
Yeah, but it's probably different today. The statistics around depression, moderate to severe depression, especially in young people, is just off the charts. I mean, 18 to 24-year-olds, the latest research, 70% moderate to severe depression.
Yeah.
And so that's one big element. And I think the thing for folks younger in their careers, don't underestimate the power of social connections and networking. Not only just
physically, you're saying?
Yeah, physically.
Yeah.
And not necessarily for career advancement, but to really learn. One of my first bosses was in Minneapolis, and I was going to graduate school. It was a health system, really successful individual. So the first meeting he took me to, he said, sit up straight, don't put your elbows on the table, don't say a word, keep your mouth shut. So this went on for probably a month. But after the meetings, he would come in and say, what'd you see? See Matt over there? You didn't look very happy. What do you think was going on there? He didn't like this idea. And so what would happen, and then about a month later, I walked into the meeting, and he goes, you can talk. And his point was, was kind of watching people, observing people. And that's the kind of stuff you're not going to get from a textbook. Emotional intelligence, which we know is probably the premier leadership skill. You don't learn that, from being on Teams. Zoom calls. You really, really have to think about that. So I would encourage people, your social connection and your social skills, emotional. If you're not going to get that at work, you got to figure out another place to get it.
How do you create a successful culture at an organization? I'm really curious to hear your response here with the amount of people and all of the dynamics and everything going on at ProMedica. How do you make sure that when they go into work that they feel like they have purpose and they understand the mission and the vision and all these different things?
Yeah, I think it's, we all kind of do it in multiple different ways. Of course, it all comes down to communication, and a lot of it is the frontline manager. A lot of people's individual success, how they feel about the company is based on that manager. So we, spend a fair amount of time with our management team and, talking to them about their responsibilities to, people understand the mission, understand the vision, making sure that people are connected at work. Because again, give a best friend at work. It really increases engagement and retention. And then we've been talking a lot recently about life purpose. Did a whole series of videos for people about life purpose. There's a professor from Michigan we work with, talked a lot about with people about finding their life purpose. And then again, just talking about, we have a kind of a tagline, and so that we kind of added to that, your health is our mission. Your health is our mission, and it's my purpose. And the idea is to try to link my purpose relating to kind of our overall kind of mission as well.
Yeah.
And I think those are the sort of things as we think about, and especially with a lot of people, a lot of geography. We joke, a lot of our employees don't even know where Ohio is. So we spend a lot of time in communication, try to do a lot of videos. We tried it a whole variety of ways. We used to do hour videos, and a half hour, 2 minutes. 2-minute videos. And then
2-minute videos that go out to who?
All the employees.
All the employees?
Yeah. So
it comes from you?
Yeah. So we used to do a lot more pre-COVID. We're just kind of getting back to that. And it's just kind of set up like a situation like this, nothing fancy, but just to kind of communicate whatever issue you want.
And
interesting. We were trying to do it every 2 weeks. We started weekly, and it was kind of hard to get that done. So every 2 weeks. What we found is people watched it after hours. Yeah. So we think like people, they're not going to watch it at work. They didn't. They watched it after hours.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's really interesting. And what about from a training perspective? With your managers, your top leaders, do you have routine or periodic training that you do with them to make sure they're getting the highest level of self-leadership or coaching, or what's your process for that?
Yeah, probably what you would expect. We get the groups together regularly, and then we do a lot of kind of co-leadership webinars. And then we asked a segment of the group, because we were preparing the agendas and stuff we thought they were interested in. So we said, you guys, they give you critiques like, okay, you guys tell us what we should talk about, or what you guys want to talk about.
And how often is that?
So we get their input now on every time you're trying to plan something. So try to get regular input about the things they want to hear about or deep dives. And so, again, all the things you can do, written communication, leadership development, leadership training. We've got a fairly robust organizational development.
Is that training they get like once a month, or is that?
It's probably not that often. Depending on where you are, probably once a quarter. Yeah. But our top, we cut it different ways. So our leadership group, we've got kind of a top 100, and then when we do a management meeting, it's over 1,000 people.
Wow.
Just to think about the size of it. So when we do it, we have to do like a Seagate Convention Center or something like that. That's hard to bring 1,000 people from the United States. So COVID slowed us down. But we love to do it at least twice a year.
Yeah.
And then we have these different business units, and trying to get some cross section. We worked a little bit with rote learning, which is based in Toledo. Very large maps that you use, and we brought different people from different business units together to talk collectively together around culture and mission, and then share their perspectives from different parts of the organization. That's very powerful. There's always an issue how you continue to follow up on that. But as far as getting people aligned, it's pretty powerful.
Wow. And how long are those sessions? Are those are those like an all-day kind of deal? Twice
probably
a year?
half day. Now we're not doing it currently, but we kind of done it at different times that are
interesting.
Past.
Cool. Great stuff. Let's move to work-life balance. So what kind of tips or advice do you have to try and make sure that you are kind of balancing that scale appropriately?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a job, and the thing is interesting. At the end of your life, you're probably going to talk about one or two things, and you're going to talk about your family and your faith. So, when my dad was in his mid-90s, he was in a nursing home in Iowa. I went to visit him right like just a day or two before he passed away, and he for some reason the TVs weren't working, so we cut the cable lines. He didn't have a newspaper, and so literally we sat and reminisced for days talking about family, and again talking about his faith. And I think that's this idea that at the end of your life you're not going to talk about the company you built, the successes. Some people do, sadly, but I think it's all that. So you keep that in the right perspective. And you can't get that time back. So we all have times where we work too much and have the wrong priorities. But again, it's just like you got to put your family first. You've got to create a work environment where work's important. We're going to work hard. We're going to do an absolutely really great job. And then what's hard today is kind of on 24/7.
Yeah.
You got a phone, you kind of go between work and checking the news and
playing your
email. Whatever you do. So So and that's a hard thing. You just gotta be a little careful that you kind of do put things aside, make sure you enjoy life.
And how many hours a week would you say you worked early in your career and where you're at now?
I think I worked different jobs, worked 6 days a week. So there were a lot of organizations I worked at. The expectation was you were there on Saturdays, and you were at least there till 1 o'clock on a Saturday. And in our business, we go to a lot of early meetings because traditionally healthcare people, work 24/7.
Yeah.
So 7 a.m. meetings and dinner meetings. And so what happens? It gets to be a lot of hours.
Yes.
And as I've gotten older, my physician would say, if you're not taking a day off every 3 weeks, you're going to burn yourself out. And that's hard. It's hard to do, but I try to do better. And as I've gotten older, to take a little time away. Okay. It's not like you need to, jump in an airplane, but even just taking a day away, do something different.
Yeah.
Try to keep your phone. I'm the worst at this, but try to keep your phone away.
Oh, me too.
For a few hours at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just we all think about it and grapple. And even now, as you've seen what's happened with COVID, 4 million women left the workforce. And the idea was, they had 2 jobs. They had a job where they go to work, and they have a job where they got home.
Yeah.
And just the burnout that we've seen. So I think it's a time and effort where people really need to spend a lot more time thinking on life, balance, and really just priorities in life.
That's really good. What about top top mantras, are there some top sayings or mantras that you tell yourself on a regular basis that kind of give life to you in certain situations?
Yes. Well, don't worry about anything. That one I recite a lot these
Yeah.
days. It's just certain things I always remember, that just basic business things like cash is king. Expenses are real, revenues are hoped for. One of my favorite books is a book, Max Dupree wrote this book called Leadership's an Art. He ran Herman Miller in Western Michigan. He had a great line in there that the job of the leader is to define reality. And the last thing the leader does is say thank you, and in between you're a servant leader. So if you think about that, it's like, I always think about that. So our jobs are to kind of paint reality to people. This is a situation, or this is what we're facing, this is what we need to do, or here's where we are as an organization, here's what we aspire to do. And of course the last line is to say, you're always going to thank people. Hard times, good times, bad times, thank you, because without you, and we, like you do, you have employees that work for you for 40, 50 years, like how do you thank them? And then the in-between part, he says, is servant leadership. And again, I think when we try to think through that, not that we're all perfect, but those sort of things, I think you should think about that. So those are kind of the things. I used to always give new leaders that book, Leadership's an Art. I haven't done it recently.
Okay.
But I used to always have it on my desk.
Yeah.
Because it was just one of those things. I think we all have articles and things that have grounded us. And I think one of the encouragements that we always say to young leaders is start collecting those. I have a leadership talk that I've done over the years, and it's all stuff that I've kept in a file. And then it has changed from time to time, and I just always use that as a way of, these are things that have meant something to me in life. Yeah. And they're not necessarily all business articles, but they're articles that make a point about something. And if you kind of keep an eye on that, you kind of keep it together, it gives you a good, strong narrative of kind of how you think about leadership from a personal perspective.
Final question I got to land on this is, where do you see the healthcare system going in the next 10 years? What's your vision? Where do you see this continuing to head?
Yeah. So healthcare system's a mess. And, it's interesting. I have a slide that shows the percent of the GDP that used to be 3%. It was 5, it was 10, it was 15. Now we're 18% of the GDP, going to 20.
Wow.
$4 trillion going to $6 trillion. Some economists say that's okay because we're a wealthy nation. But at some point, there's a break point. And I think we're at that break point where we can't continue to have the costs we do. Mm-hmm. And so, you work in a company of insurance, you have means, that's okay. But the number of people who healthcare is forced into bankruptcy, mm-hmm. or they can't access care because they can't afford a copay or deductibles. And so when you begin to look at some of the results of healthcare, it's almost like we're in denial. I'm talking about the industry. We're in denial. Like, we have this wonderful healthcare system. We have great people working in a model that's broken. But we created the model. After World War II, we built, there's an act called the Hope-Burton Act, built the equivalent of 4,050-bedded hospitals. People don't like it when you say this, but they're factories. And a lot of these factories either need to close, which gets into a lot of issues relative to communities, or they need to be retrofitted. And we believe there's some ways to retrofit those and make them more public health and social based. So for the last 2 or 3 years, probably longer than that, we, ProMedica, have been lobbying with a few others for a national commission on health. And what the national commission would do is to say, okay, this is the model today. We're going to move to a different model in 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, industry groups, you have a chance to prepare. But at this point in time, and so you got to give everybody a chance to prepare for that. And so if we could do that and think about, capping expenditures, I've always thought we, American citizens, built the healthcare system. We should expect more of them. We should expect them to do the social determinants of health work in their community. Very unpopular with a lot of healthcare people. We think they should be responsible for public health. We think you can start to pay them to do different things to incent different behavior. So we've been lobbying for that. So right now the trajectory is nothing's going to change. The only thing that people can agree on in the industry is pay us more, because they're all different. And the only thing Congress can do, basically agree on right now is just cut. And so we're really not taking care of seniors in this country. So I think there has to be, at some point, there has to be kind of a rethinking of where we're headed. And I really, I don't have a lot of confidence in healthcare to do that, just because they can't agree because they all have different sort of ideas, now trying to preserve where they are. It really probably has to come from the business community and exerting political influence or creating their own sort of way of life, because that's really where people are going to step up and say, okay, it's time to change.
Yeah. Do you think somebody will create a better model in the business community and it will start to be adopted eventually? Or where do you think that change will come from?
To a point, yeah. I think, the problem is you have to, you can do some of it, you can do some things on access and primary care and maybe a little access, but at some point you need to get, your employees are going to end up in a hospital, or they're going to need higher end services. And the idea that you can do some of those things and kind of cannibalize some of it, but the idea is we need to integrate it all, and it all needs to be redone. So right now, for example, there's a thought that 40% of healthcare could be delivered at home, and the technology exists to do it. But the fight to do that, you have doctors whose lives are because of what goes on in a hospital.
Yeah.
You have pharmaceutical companies who make tremendous profits, insurance companies, medical device manufacturers. The list just goes on and on. They're all incentivized to keep this going, and a lot of people call it the great, medical industrial complex. And if you ever look at the dollars that healthcare pays to lobby, it's incredible. Wow. So really, this idea that we need a new model, we have a history of national commissions. So they're actually the people in healthcare now kind of signing on to say, we call it Voices from Healthcare, and are actually saying the same sort of thing. We've got to do something different.
Great stuff. Randy, thank you so much for your leadership and time today.
Great time. Thank you.
Well, hopefully you guys found value in today's episode. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Also share it with your friends. And guys, I just want to say thanks so much for being a part of our leadership network, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.